They began forgetting Nerith Lark before the tower door ever closed. That was how the Fireless Tower worked. Not with screaming. Not with chains dragged through the hall. Not with a blade, a brand, or a public pyre. The tower was gentler than execution, and that made the Dragon Court call it mercy. A woman entered with a name. A bed in the lower wing. A cup on the servant's shelf. A voice someone might recognize in the dark. By morning, she became an absence no one could explain. Nerith stood barefoot before the court, while the memory clerk scraped her service mark from the palace ledger. The sound was soft, almost polite. A little silver knife moving over black parchment, shaving away 6 years of work in thin, pale curls. Lower hearth servant, nursery ember keeper, sickroom candle tender, winter cradle watch. Each line vanished. Behind her, servants stared at the floor. Some had eaten beside her. Some had borrowed thread from her. One had cried into Nerith's shoulder after a fever took her little brother. Already their faces looked uncertain, as if memory had begun loosening its fingers. One of the kitchen girls lifted her eyes to Nerith, almost spoke, then frowned as if the name had already gone missing. Nerith did not plead with them. A begged for memory could become another kind of humiliation. High Ember Keeper Orsina Marrow stood beside the ledger table, her silver-red hair braided with tiny flamestones that burned without heat. Her robes shimmered like controlled sunset. Everything about her was warm to look at and cold to feel. Nerith Lark, Orsina said. You have failed court flame 3 times. Nerith lifted her head. I have kept the nursery warm through 3 winters. A noblewoman near the dragon banners gave a quiet laugh. Warm is what servants call fire when they cannot make it. The words found the old wound easily. Nerith's gift had never looked impressive. She could not summon dragonfire into her palm. She could not light a war beacon with a breath. She could not bend flame into spears, crowns, or golden beasts for festival rites, but when a child's brazier burned too hot and made him cough, Nerith could lay one hand near the coals and soften the heat. When a sickroom candle guttered, she could keep it alive through the night. When the old kitchen hearth turned hungry and blue, she could make it remember bread instead of burning. The court had no name for that, so they called it nothing. Dragon King Corvin Haldrake sat upon the ember-black throne beneath a canopy of folded bronze wings. He was broad-shouldered, dark-haired, and severe, with eyes like deep gold fire banked behind iron. His royal flame coiled around his armor in thin red gold seams, beautiful and violent. It did not flicker like common fire. It watched. Nerith could feel its heat from across the hall. It was wrong. Not weak. Wrong. A fire made for conquest, starved of gentleness. Corvin looked at her hands. Show the court. Orsina smiled. A servant brought forward a cradle lamp from the royal nursery. Small, gold-framed, shaped like a sleeping dragon curled around a glass heart. The flame inside had gone harsh from overfeeding, burning white at the center, too bright for an infant chamber. Nerith knew that kind of flame. It looked strong until it touched someone fragile. Orsina placed the lamp before her. If you carry flame, command it. Nerith looked at the little lamp, then at the king. This flame does not need command. The court murmured. Corvin's eyes sharpened. Nerith leaned closer and set her bound hands near the glass. She did not push power into it. She did not force it down. She breathed once, slowly, the way she had done beside cradle fires when frightened children woke sweating. The white center softened, only a little. The flame turned gold at the edges, then low and steady, less proud, more useful. The chamber went quiet around it. A baby could have slept beside that flame. For one breath, the royal dragonfire coiled around Corvin's armor bent toward her. Not visibly enough for the court. Enough for him. Nerith saw his hand tighten on the throne arm. Orsina moved first. She snapped the nursery lamp shut inside a silver cover, killing the softened glow before anyone could name it. No command, she declared. No royal flame. No spark birth. Nerith looked at her. You saw it change. I saw a servant calm a lamp. Orsina turned to the court. A useful domestic trick. Not dragon inheritance. Corvin said nothing. That was the first thing Nerith would remember hating him for. Not cruelty. Cowardice dressed as restraint. Orsina lifted the scraped ledger page. By Ember law, Nerith Lark is fireless. Her court service is void. Her name shall be withdrawn from palace memory before the 7th bell. She will be sealed in the Fireless Tower until the remaining warmth in her body fades harmlessly. Remaining warmth. Nerith felt the words strike deeper than fireless. Corvin heard them too. She saw it in his face, the smallest fracture beneath royal discipline. He knew the tower took something. Maybe not enough, but enough to make silence a choice. He did not need to believe the law was merciful. He only needed to keep using it. The guards led her out beneath banners of gold dragonfire. No one touched her gently. No one touched her cruelly. That, too, was part of the punishment. Indifference made the body feel already half forgotten. The Fireless Tower stood beyond the northern wall, narrow and windowed only at the top. No torches burned on its stair. The stones were warm under Nerith's palm, not from outside sun, but from heat trapped within, breathing slowly through the walls. Women had vanished here, not because they lacked flame, because something in the tower had been fed by what they carried. The tower did not kill women. It taught the world to make room where they had been, and then forget why the space felt wrong. At the 7th bell, Nerith felt the palace forget her surname. At the 8th, she forgot which servant had cried on her shoulder. At the 9th, the tower floor pulsed under her bare feet like a sleeping furnace. She climbed to the single high window and gripped the stone ledge. "I am still here," she whispered. Below, the kingdom burned with dragonfire. Watchtowers, noble hearths, temple lamps, palace braziers, war beacons along the black ridge. At midnight, every flame bent, not toward the throne, toward her window. The flames did not bow to Nerith. They remembered her. That was the first thing the Fireless Tower tried to make her forget. Not her name. Not yet. Names were only the surface of a person. The tower was more patient than that. It worked underneath, taking the small warmths first. The feel of bread held too long in both hands. The smell of linen dried beside a nursery brazier. The sound of a sick child sleeping easier because the candle near his bed no longer burned too sharp. Nerith gripped the window ledge as the kingdom's dragonfire bent through the night. Watchtower flames leaned sideways from their iron bowls. Temple lamps stretched long and thin, gold and red, like birds straining at invisible thread. Noble hearths twisted away from marble rooms. War beacons along the black ridge curved into bright arcs, all pointing toward the narrow tower where the court had locked a woman they had already begun to erase. None of the flames entered. They only leaned, as if something in them knew the tower was hungry. Behind Nerith, the round chamber pulsed with hidden heat. The stones did not glow, but they breathed. Each slow pulse pulled at her from the inside, coaxing loose what Orsina had called remaining warmth. Not flame, not power, memory that had learned the shape of comfort. The tower did not steal all at once. It made absence feel natural. A woman forgot the voice of the friend who would miss her. Then the friend forgot why she had turned toward an empty chair. A kitchen hearth lost the hand that softened it. Then the cook forgot why the bread burned harsher after a certain winter. The world adjusted around the missing woman until the hole she left became ordinary. The tower did not kill women. It trained life to continue without asking why it felt colder. Nerith pressed both hands to her chest. "Nerith," she whispered. The name stayed. For now. Below, in the palace, the first disaster began. A nursery lamp went out. Not dimmed. Out. Then another. Then another. Every cradle flame in the royal nursery pulled itself thin and bent northward, toward the tower. Nursemaids cried out as dragon-blooded infants woke in sudden cold. In the sick rooms, candles leaned away from fever beds. In the kitchens, the bread hearth spat sparks and refused to brown the morning loaves prepared for the dawn council. Funeral lamps in the ancestor chapel curved until their flames almost touched the stone windows. Servants ran through corridors with blankets, coals, and shaking hands. One kitchen girl stopped beside the great bread oven and frowned. "I should know who fixes this," she whispered. No one answered. She looked toward the north wall without knowing why. In the Ember Hall, Dragon King Corvin Haldrake rose from his throne as his own royal flame bent across his armor. It did not leave him, but it leaned. That was enough to make every noble step back. The red gold seams along his breastplate twisted toward the fireless tower, straining from his body like chained fire remembering an older hearth. Behind him, his dragon shadow unfolded from the wall, huge and smoke-dark, its horned head turning north. Orsina Marrow moved quickly. A tower contamination. Nothing more. The tower returns echoes when it is hungry. Corvin looked at her. My flame does not obey contamination. No, Orsina said, smooth as ever. It resists it. That is what you feel. His eyes narrowed. I did not say what I felt. For the first time that night, Orsina had no immediate answer. Corvin stepped down from the throne. With each step, the flame along his armor dragged harder toward the north. It did not want the throne room. It did not want the council. It did not want war banners or royal blood. It wanted the window of a woman he had watched condemned. His dragon shadow moved faster than he did, stretching across the wall toward the tower, claws scraping smoke against stone. Bring the flames back, Corvin ordered. Ember priests lifted their staffs. They chanted command words older than the palace. The war beacons resisted. The temple lamps resisted. The nursery flames, small and frightened, resisted most of all. The court worshipped flame when it rose. Nerith kept it alive when it was small. That was what the flames remembered. Inside the tower, Nerith nearly forgot the color of her own hair. A sharp emptiness opened behind her eyes. She gasped and grabbed at memory, but the tower pulled with a soft, steady patience. Dark brown, she thought. My hair is dark brown. My hands smell of lamp oil. I slept in the lower ash wing. I kept the cradle fire for Prince Tovin when he had winter cough. The moment she remembered the child, a nursery flame outside the palace curved brighter. Warmth struck the tower window. Not heat. Memory. Prince Tovin's small hand curled around her finger, his breath easing, the lamp softening under her palm. A nurse whispering, "He sleeps better when you tend the room." Nerith sobbed once. The memory returned like a coal placed carefully back into her chest. Another flame bent. A sick room candle. Old Lord Heron waking from fever and asking who had kept the candle gentle. Another. A kitchen hearth remembering bread. Another. A funeral lamp remembering how Nerith had stood alone after a servant burial because no family had come. Each flame returned a piece of her the tower had begun to eat. But the walls were waking too. Old heat moved inside the stones. Not dragonfire. Not royal flame. Something softer. Trapped and layered over years. Nerith turned from the window and saw faint shapes beneath the blackened wall. Handprints. Dozens. Small, large, old, young. Pressed into stone from the inside. Women. Not dead. Not alive as bodies. Kept as warmth memory. Nerith stepped back, trembling. The nearest handprint glowed. A woman's voice whispered from the wall. Thin as a flame sheltered under a cup. Do not let them return us as fuel. Below the tower, Corvin reached the northern courtyard and looked up. For one breath, through the high window, his eyes found Nerith's. The flames between them bent harder. Then every handprint inside the fireless tower opened at once. Not like doors, like mouths. The fireless tower had never been empty. It had only been full of women the court had taught the world not to miss. Nerith understood it as the walls breathed around her. Not with air. With warmth. Every hand pressed into the black stone gave off a different kind of remembered heat. Bread pulled from an oven, a fevered brow cooled by candlelight, a cradle blanket warmed before dawn, a funeral lamp kept alive because grief should not stand in darkness alone. The tower was not speaking in words at first. It spoke in what had been taken. Nerith stumbled back from the nearest wall, but there was nowhere to go. The chamber was round, windowed high, and now alive with dozens of open handprints. They did not reach for her. They did not kneel. They did not call her savior. They warned her. A child's sick room, a bride's winter chamber, a servant burial, a royal nursery. Each memory brushed Nerith's skin like heat from a flame she had once protected. Then voices began to form inside it, thin and layered, not dead enough to be ghosts and not living enough to breathe. Do not trust the tower door. Do not answer when it calls you empty. Do not let them send us back into the throne. Nerith pressed one hand to her chest. Who are you? The wall warmed beneath the nearest handprint. We were called fireless. Another voice followed, older and rougher. Because we did not make flames bow. A third whispered. Because we made them stay gentle. Nerith's throat tightened. Below the window, the kingdom's dragonfire still bent toward the tower. But the chamber behind her pulled harder now. The stone floor pulsed under her bare feet. Each pulse tugged at the memories the flames had returned to her. Her name. Her work. The sick child. The bread hearth. The funeral lamp. The tower wanted all of it. Not to destroy her. To store her. That was worse. A bronze vent high in the wall snapped open. Orsina Marrow's voice flowed through it. Calm and intimate. As if she stood beside Nerith rather than below in the courtyard. Step away from the wall. Nerith turned toward the vent. You knew they were here. The tower returns echoes when it is hungry. These are not echoes. No. Orsina said after a pause. They are remnants that refuse to cool. The handprints trembled. Nerith looked from one glowing palm to the next. If we carried no fire, why did your throne feed on us? Silence struck the tower. Even the walls seemed to stop breathing. Then Orsina answered, and her voice had lost its softness. A crown cannot burn on mercy alone. It needs warmth. No one important will miss. The words entered Nerith like cold water. Below, in the courtyard, Corvin heard them too. She knew because the royal flame outside changed. The red gold fire along his armor recoiled, not from Nerith, but from itself. His dragon shadow spread across the tower stones, huge and restless. Clawing at the sealed door, soldiers held lanterns that bent toward Nerith's window. Ember priests stood in circles, chanting command after command. But none of the flames obeyed. Corvin's voice rose from below, sharp enough to reach her chamber. Open the tower. The door did not move. Orsina's reply came through the bronze vent in the courtyard at once. The Fireless Tower is bound to royal flame. It cannot open while the king's fire remains sovereign. Nerith moved to the window and looked down. Corvin stood in the northern courtyard, a black and gold figure beneath a sky full of bending fire. His face was unreadable from such height, but his dragon shadow was not. It pressed its massive head against the tower door like a beast recognizing a cage too late. The seal is mine? He asked. Orsina stood several paces behind him, robes bright in the warped glow. Inherited majesty, that is not what I asked. She lifted her chin. Yes. The word should have satisfied him. It did not. Nerith watched him look at the door, then at the flames, then at the high window where she stood, with stolen women breathing in the walls behind her. The court had called them fireless because it was easier than admitting the crown had been warmed by stolen hands. Corvin understood enough to be afraid. Not for himself. For what his power had been eating without asking. He looked up at Nerith. Can you leave? The question was too late to be kind. Still, it was better than an order. Nerith glanced back at the walls. Not alone. The nearest handprint pulsed against the stone. Not through the door. A woman whispered. Another voice said, the door returns warmth to the royal flame before it opens. Nerith understood. Every woman sent here had been offered release only after she became fuel. The tower did not merely erase them from memory. It processed them into usable warmth, stripped of names, softened into power, then poured back into royal dragonfire as if kindness could be harvested cleanly once the hands were gone. Her stomach turned. Corvin heard enough through the open vent. His face hardened. Orsina stepped toward him quickly. Majesty, if you weaken the royal flame, the war beacons may fail. The border dragons may stir. The noble houses will call this madness. Corvin did not look at her. How many women? That record is not kept by number. By what? Yield. As if women were not counted by lives, but by how long their warmth could keep another flame beautiful. The word made Nerith's vision blur. In the walls, the handprints shuddered. Corvin's dragon shadow roared without sound, smoke bursting from its jaws. For a moment, Nerith thought he would burn the tower in rage and kill everything trapped inside it. Instead, he placed one hand against the sealed door. Break it. The royal flame on his armor dimmed for the first time. without stolen warmth beneath it. Royal fire looked less divine and more hungry. The courtyard went cold. Nobles cried out. Priests staggered. War beacons across the ridge bent lower, as if the kingdom itself had lost breath. Corvin's jaw tightened, but he kept his hand on the door while his dragonfire drained into the tower seal. Inside, the floor cracked. The handprints flared, one by one, no longer hungry, no longer silent. A woman's shape pulled free from the nearest wall in threads of gold warmth. She was not a noble, not a priestess, not a queen. She wore the plain white wrap of a royal cradle warmer, and when her eyes opened, she looked past Nerith to the window below. Her voice broke. I warmed Corvin Haldrake's cradle. Then she turned her hollow gaze on the king, and they told him I never existed. The first woman released from the wall did not bow to the king she had kept alive. She stood unsteadily in the round chamber, made of gold warmth and old breath, her plain white cradle wrap hanging around a body that was not fully flesh. Her edges flickered like a candle seen through water. The tower had kept her too long to return her whole, but not long enough to make her obedient. Below the window, Corvin Haldrake stared up at her. For the first time since Nerith had seen him, the Dragon King looked young, not weak. Stripped, his royal flame, dimmed along his armor, bent toward the woman as if it recognized something his mind could not. He opened his mouth. No name came. The cradle warmer's face tightened, but she did not cry. Do not search gently, Majesty. They took the name before you were old enough to lose it. Corvin's hand stayed against the tower door. The seal under his palm glowed red gold, feeding on his royal fire. I remember no cradle. Warmer. No, the woman said. That was the point. Nerith stepped closer to her, careful not to touch. What did they take from you? The woman looked at her, and warmth passed between them like a memory of hands near a sleeping child. First, my place in the nursery. Then my voice from the nursemaids' minds. Then the lullaby I hummed when the king's cradle flame burned too harsh. Last, my name. The tower walls pulsed. Other handprints trembled. Orsina's voice rose from below, hard enough to cut through the courtyard cold. The king was a child during the Black Winter. The royal flame in him had begun devouring its own warmth. He would not sleep. He would not feed. Every cradle lamp went white, hot near him. The cradle warmer turned toward the window. So you fed me to the tower. We preserved what kept him alive, Orsina said. Nerith looked down at the woman in red-silver robes. Saved him from cold? Or saved the court from admitting who warmed him? The courtyard went silent. Corvin's dragon shadow lowered its enormous head until its smoke-dark eyes were level with Orsina. She did not step back. That made her more dangerous, not less. She believed enough of her own necessity to stand beside the cage she had guarded. A crown survives by what others surrender, Orsina said. You call it theft because you were born low enough to resent the structure that shelters you. Nerith's hands curled. I was sealed here because your structure needed to eat. The handprints answered with a low pulse of heat. Corvin's voice came colder than the night. Return her name. The tower door did not open. Instead, the seal beneath his hand flared, and every flame in the courtyard bent flat toward the ground. Nobles cried out as their lanterns guttered. Ember priests grabbed at their staffs. Across the ridge, the war beacons dimmed and shook like hearts losing rhythm. Words burned across the tower door in old dragon script, names bound inside royal flame. Nerith read them from above and felt the chamber tilt around her. The names had not been merely stored in the tower. They had been poured into the royal fire, stripped of personhood, used as hidden warmth beneath the king's blaze. Corvin read it too. His face did not soften. It hollowed. How many names are in me? He asked. Orsina answered too quickly. You are not personally responsible for inherited flame. Nerith looked down at him. No, but you are responsible for what you keep after knowing. That reached him. She saw it not in his face but in his fire. The royal flame along his armor recoiled again. Thinner now. Less golden. More raw. Without stolen warmth beneath it, royal fire looked less divine and more hungry. Corvin removed his hand from the door and pressed it against the center of his own breastplate. Orsina's composure broke. Majesty, Do not divide sovereign flame. Return her name, he said again. The seal answered by sinking teeth of red light into his armor. He did not cry out. That almost made Nerith angrier. Kings were trained to make pain look noble. Servants were punished until pain looked deserved. She would not let his suffering become a crown over hers. Do not make this a royal sacrifice, she called down. Corvin looked up. The flames between them bent like a bridge. Nerith's voice shook but held. A name returned is not comfort. It is ownership taken back from the fire. Give it back because it was never yours. For a moment, the courtyard heard only the beacons struggling against darkness. Then Corvin bowed his head once. Not to Nerith. To the truth of what she had said. It was never mine. The seal cracked. Royal flame poured from his armor into the tower door, not in a glorious stream, but in uneven, tearing pulses. Each one dimmed him further. The gold in his eyes dulled toward ember red. His dragon shadow shuddered and spread one wing against the ground as if bracing the kingdom's weight. Inside the chamber, the cradle warmer gasped. A sound entered her. Not breath. Self. Letters formed across her chest in warm gold, slow and painful. Illyra Morn. The moment the name returned, the tower changed. Not much. Enough. A memory struck Corvin so visibly that even the nobles below saw him stagger. He was small inside it, wrapped in black cradle silk, crying near a lamp too bright to bear. A young woman with tired eyes and steady hands bent over him, not commanding the flame, only coaxing it lower, humming a tune without words until the royal child slept. Corvin gripped the tower stone. Illyra, he said. The cradle warmer closed her eyes. Not with forgiveness, with recognition. Orsina stepped forward. One name, Majesty. One. If all return, the royal flame may collapse. The throne fires may fail. The border dragons may wake hungry. The court will not survive on tenderness. Nerith turned from the window to the walls full of waiting hands. Her own name glowed warmer inside her chest now. Returned piece by the flames she had kept alive when they were small. She looked back down at Orsina. Then let the flame learn to live without eating us. The tower heard her. The floor split from the center to the wall. Deep below the chamber, past layers of stolen warmth and sealed names, something opened that was older than the tower itself. A hidden inner wall drew back. Inside it burned a flame unlike every dragonfire in the kingdom. Low, steady, ancien, and stolen before Corvin Haldrake was born. The ancient flame did not leap toward Nerith. It waited. That frightened her more than hunger would have. Every royal flame she had ever known demanded something. Oil, command, air, obedience, bodies if it could find them. Dragonfire wanted to rise. Warfire wanted to conquer. Court flame wanted an audience. This flame only burned low behind the opened inner wall, steady as a heart that had never needed a crown to prove it was alive. The chamber changed around it. The handprints quieted. Illyra Morn turned toward the hidden fire with tears shining in eyes that still were not fully flesh. The other warmth memories pressed close inside the walls. Dozens of women holding silence the way people hold breath before a verdict. Below the window, the courtyard had gone cold enough that nobles pulled their cloaks tight. Corvin's royal fire still glowed along his armor, but it was thinner now, stripped of the softness that had made it beautiful. Without the stolen warmth, it showed what lay beneath. A force made to burn first and understand later. What is that flame? He demanded. Orsina did not answer. That was answer enough. Nerith stepped toward the hidden wall. The floor under her feet warmed, not to lure her, but to meet her. The flame did not brighten. It simply made room for her presence, the way a hearth makes room for hands held near it. Illyra whispered, "Do not touch it until you know what it remembers." Nerith stopped. What does it remember? The ancient flame bent once, very slightly. A memory opened in the heat. Not inside Nerith's mind. Around her. The tower chamber fell away, replaced by a world before the Fireless Tower. Before the Ember Hall. Before dragon banners hung over men who believed flame belonged to bloodlines. There was only a stone valley at winter dusk, full of wounded dragons and frightened humans. Dragonfire poured wild across the snow, too powerful to gather around, too hungry to warm a child, too proud to lower itself. Then women came forward. Not queens, not priestesses. Women carrying bowls, blankets, herbs, bread, sleeping infants, funeral lamps, and hands scarred from keeping ordinary fires alive. They did not command the dragons. They knelt beside their flames and taught them patience. One woman placed both hands near a dragon's blue-white fire and breathed slowly. The flame softened. The dragon lowered its head. The memory vanished. Nerith could not move. Corvin's voice came from below, lower now. Who were they? The ancient flame answered through the walls. Hearth-Origin. The words spread through the tower, and every handprint warmed. Orsena finally spoke. A dead line. Nerith looked toward the bronze vent. Dead? Ended. Orsena corrected. Contained. Made useful before it could become dangerous. The ancient flame trembled. Corvin turned on her. Dangerous because they taught dragonfire to warm? Orsena's face was pale in the courtyard glow, but her voice held. Dangerous because dragons remembered them better than kings. Dangerous because flame answered women with no crown. Dangerous because every empire breaks when power chooses tenderness over command. Nerith felt the words enter the chamber like frost. There it was. Not fear of weakness. Fear that warmth might obey someone the court could not rank. The flame behind the inner wall bent toward her. Not fully. Enough. Orsena saw it. Her voice sharpened through the tower vent. Step back, Nerith Lark. Nerith almost laughed. After all the scraping, sealing, and forgetting, Orsena used her full name because fear had made it useful. You remember me now? I remember threats. I thought I was fireless. You are worse, Orsena said. You are the kind of warmth that makes fire disobedient. Below, Corvin took one step toward the sealed door. Orsena lifted both hands. And the tower answered her. The stones under Nerith's feet flared red. The handprints cried out. Not in voices this time. In heat. The walls began pulling from every woman at once. Illyra's newly returned name, the nursery warmth, the funeral lamps, the sickroom candles, the bread, hearth memories, all drawn toward the hidden ancient flame, as if the tower meant to stuff everything back inside it and close the wound before truth could breathe. Nerith staggered. Illyra reached for her, but her hand passed through Nerith's sleeve in a flicker of gold. She is forcing the return. What return? The tower can pour us back into the crown flame, Illyra said. But it needs a living hearth to carry us cleanly. Nerith understood too late. Here. The chamber floor opened in a ring around her feet. Not a pit, but a pattern of old hearth marks. The ancient flame lowered, not attacking but grieving. It knew what the tower was trying to do. Corvin slammed his hand against the sealed door below. Orsena did not look at him. If you want the war beacons to burn by dawn, Majesty, let the tower complete its work. You are draining them. I am stabilizing the kingdom. You are using her. I am using what she is. Orsena's gaze lifted to the high window. That is what courts do with rare things before rare things learn to refuse. Nerith's knees nearly buckled as warmth tore through her. Memories rushed toward her body, too many to hold. Women humming, women weeping, women feeding flames through winter, women vanishing from beds no one remembered making. Her own name shook under the weight of theirs. The ancient flame whispered without words. Do not hold all, Nerith gasped. Then where do they go? The flame answered by bending toward the kingdom's dragonfires still curved outside her window. Not into the throne. Into every flame they had once kept alive. Nerith understood. The court had made the tower a funnel. She could make herself a door. She lifted her shaking hands toward the window. You are not fuel. The handprint stilled. You are not yield. Corvin's royal flame dimmed almost to red-black as he pressed harder against the seal. His dragon shadow wrapped both claws around the tower door and pulled until cracks raced through the stone. Nerith looked down at him through the bending fire. If you break the door, she called, do not open it to take me out. His face lifted. She said, open it to let them leave. Something changed in him then. Not love. Not yet. Obedience to a truth not shaped like his throne. Corvin placed both hands on the seal. Then leave through me if you must. No, Nerith said. The answer struck him still. She stepped toward the ancient flame, holding her own trembling memory in place by force. Through the fires that remember them, the hidden flame rose at last. Behind Nerith, every handprint in the wall inhaled, and across the kingdom, every dragon flame opened like an eye. The kingdom did not go dark when the dragon flames opened. It watched. Every lamp, hearth, beacon, brazier, and altar fire turned its bright center toward the Fireless Tower. And for one breath, the night seemed filled with hundreds of golden eyes. Not beast eyes, not human eyes. Flame eyes. Old, patient, and suddenly awake. Nerith felt them looking through her. Not at her, through her, toward the women trapped in the tower walls. The handprints behind her shuddered. Warmth memories rose from them in thin gold threads, trembling like breath in winter air. Illyra Morn pressed one translucent hand over her own name, holding it close as if it might be stolen again. Other women had no names yet. They were only warmth, a lullaby without a mouth, a hearth without a home, a funeral lamp without mourners. The ancient flame behind the opened inner wall burned low and steady. It was waiting for Nerith to choose the shape of the door. Below, Corvin Haldrake stood with both hands on the tower seal, his dragon shadow braced around the door. The royal flame along his armor had dimmed to a thin red line, no longer beautiful enough for court poets, no longer bright enough to hide what it had eaten. Orsina saw the flames watching. For the first time, she looked afraid of fire, not because it could burn her, because it could remember without permission. "Close the beacons," she ordered. The Ember priests hesitated. "Close them," she snapped. They raised their staffs and chanted the old sovereign commands. Across the ridge, war beacons jerked as if struck by chains. Temple flames strained against their bowls. Palace braziers flickered in pain. The open fire eyes began to narrow. Nerith understood at once. If Orsina closed the flames, the women would have nowhere to return except the crown. "No," Nerith whispered. The tower floor pulled at her feet. The hearth marks around her brightened. The tower wanted to use her body as a clean passage. Orsena wanted the stolen warmth poured back into royal flame before anyone outside the northern courtyard understood what had happened. If Nerith resisted too hard, the women might scatter into nothing. If she yielded, they would become fuel again. Illyra turned to her. "Do not hold all of us. I do not know how to let you go." "You do," Illyra said. "You did it every time you kept a small flame alive without owning it." The words steadied something in Nerith. The court worshipped flame when it rose. Nerith kept it alive when it was small. She lifted both hands, palms shaking, and faced the open fires beyond the window. "Remember who warmed you." The first warmth thread left the wall. It did not enter Nerith. It passed beside her, brushing her cheek with the scent of milk-warmed linen and cradle smoke. Illyra's thread reached the nursery flames below, and every cradle lamp in the palace turned gold again, low and soft, safe enough for sleeping children. A nursemaid screamed, not in fear, in recognition. "Illyra," she whispered, though she had never known the name before. The word traveled through the palace. Illyra closed her eyes as if a hand had touched her face. A name returned was not comfort. It was ownership taken back from the fire. Another warmth thread moved. A kitchen hearth flared gentle orange, and 3 cooks stopped running long enough to cry over a name that entered their mouths with the smell of bread. Another thread returned to a sick-room candle, and an old servant sat up in bed asking why he remembered a woman singing beside fever water. Another entered a funeral lamp, and the ancestor chapel filled with the sound of servants whispering names that had once been scraped from palace ledgers. The tower shook. Orsina's face hardened. Enough. She drew a thin ember key from beneath her robes and drove it into the courtyard stone. The Fireless Tower answered her. A deep red line crawled up the outer wall, then through the chamber, wrapping around the open handprints like a net. The women cried out as the warmth threads froze halfway between wall and window. Corvin turned toward her. "What have you done?" "What you were too sentimental to do," Orsina said. "Emergency sovereign recall. All unstable warmth returns to the crown source." The red net tightened. Every flame eye across the kingdom bent violently toward Corvin. Not Nerith. Corvin, his body locked. The remaining royal fire along his armor flared bright, then went hungry black at the center. Nerith saw the truth before he did. The tower was trying to pour all the women back into him, not as names, not as lives, but as warmth without memory. His dragon shadow roared, its shape tearing at the edges. Orsina's voice rang through the courtyard. Majesty, let it happen. The throne fire will stabilize. The beacons will return. The court will remember only that the fireless servant caused a disturbance, and the king restored order. Nerith stared down at him. That was the old road. The easy road. A king swallowing stolen warmth so the world could keep calling the stolen women empty. Corvin lifted his head toward her window. Pain carved every line of his face, but his voice stayed clear. Nerith. It was the first time he spoke her name as if it mattered whether she heard it. Tell me what not to take. Her throat tightened. Not from romance. From the terrible relief of being asked before power reached. Everything that has a name, she called. The red net tightened again. Corvin slammed one hand against his own breastplate. Then the crown refuses nameless warmth. The royal fire tore open. Gold-black flame burst from his armor and struck the tower seal. Corvin dropped to one knee, but kept his hand pressed to his chest, as if holding his own fire apart by force. Nobles shouted. Ember priests stumbled back. Orsina screamed his title like a warning. Inside the tower, the frozen warmth threads broke free. But the price showed immediately. The royal flame did not return to its old brightness. It thinned. Without the stolen warmth beneath it, Corvin's fire looked wounded, furious, and dangerously alive. Nerith turned back to the ancient flame. Help me return them with names. The flame bent close enough for heat to kiss her palms. Then, beneath her skin, a mark appeared small, gold, and shaped like a hearth circle rather than a dragon crown. Ilira husped. Orsina saw it from below and went still. No, she whispered. The ancient flame spoke through every fire in the kingdom at once. Hearth-Origin Daughter recognized. The tower floor split wider beneath Nerith's feet, and from the deepest wall came a voice older than all the others. Then bring back the first woman they burned for teaching dragons gentleness. The oldest voice did not come from the walls. It came from beneath them. The fireless tower trembled from its deepest stones upward, and the ancient hearth flame lowered until its glow touched the cracks around Nerith's feet. The gold mark beneath her skin burned in a circle over her palm. Not painful, not gentle either. It felt like a lock remembering the hand it had been waiting for. The handprints in the walls grew still. Even Ilira Morn bowed her head not to Nerith, not to the king below, but to the voice that had risen from under every stolen warmth in the tower. Nerith swallowed. Who was she? The deep voice answered through the floor, roughened by centuries of contained heat. The first hand. Images rose in the chamber. Not clean memories. Broken ones. Heat remembered shape before language did. Nerith saw a valley under winter stars, a dragon with its wing torn open, men running from its flame, and one woman walking toward it with no crown, no weapon, no prayer except a bowl of water held between both hands. The dragon breathed fire at her. The woman did not command it to stop. She knelt where its heat nearly killed her and set the water down. The fire bent around her. Not because she was stronger than the dragon, because she did not ask the flame to become smaller for her pride. She asked it to become useful for the wounded. The dragon lowered its head to the bowl. Nerith felt the memory in her bones. This was not court magic. Not royal flame. Not battle inheritance. This was the beginning of warmth. Below, Corvin saw it through every flame still open across the courtyard. His face was pale, royal fire torn thin around his armor, one hand still pressed to his chest where he had refused to swallow nameless warmth. His dragon shadow crouched beside the tower door, no longer clawing, only watching the ancient memory with smoke-dark grief. Orsina Marrow backed away from the ember key still buried in the courtyard stone. Close it, she ordered the priests. No one moved. Close it. One priest lifted his staff with shaking hands. Every flame in the courtyard turned its eye toward him. He lowered the staff. Orsina's face hardened. You fools. If that first name returns, dragonfire will remember a law older than crowns. Corvin looked at her. Good. It will not be yours. His answer came after a breath. Perhaps it never was. That silenced the courtyard more completely than any command. Nerith heard him and hated that the words touched something tender in her. A right sentence spoken late was still late, yet late truth could become a door, if the one who spoke it paid the cost to open it. The ancient flame rose higher. Another memory unfolded. The first Hearth-woman stood before a gathering of kings, dragon riders, priests, and frightened villagers. The dragon she had tended lay behind her, alive and warm without burning the village around it. Children slept near its folded wing. Old people held their hands near its softened breath. For one impossible hour, dragonfire had become shelter. Then the crowned men arrived. Their faces were blurred by time, but their hunger was clear. One of them pointed toward the woman. If flame obeys her kindness, why would it answer our blood? The memory jumped. Shai. A public square. The same woman bound between two iron pillars, while dragons screamed from distant cliffs. A royal priest holding a bowl of her hearth water now boiled dry. Then fire. Nerith staggered backward, but Alira caught her wrist. This time, the cradle warmer's hand held. Not fully. Enough. They burned her? Nerith whispered. No, Alira said. They tried. The memory sharpened. The flames surrounding the first woman would not devour her. They bent away, shuddering, refusing to make cruelty look sacred. So the kings did something worse. They took the warmth from the flames that loved her. One by one, fires were dragged from hearths, cradles, sick rooms, funeral stones, dragon nests. Their gentleness was stripped and poured into a hidden furnace beneath the future tower. The woman did not burn. She faded, hollowed by every warmth stolen in her name. The court called it execution because that sounded cleaner than draining. Nerith's palm mark burned brighter. The ancient voice spoke again. Bring back her name. Nerith looked at the walls. Do you know it? The handprints trembled. No. The answer came from all of them. Not one stolen woman knew the first woman's name. The tower had been built on its removal. Every record after that had been arranged around the absence. Below, Corvin turned to Orsina. Where is it kept? Orsina's mouth tightened. He stepped toward her, and for the first time she looked at him not as king, but as a dangerous man with too little stolen warmth left to make his fire civilized. Where? He repeated. She lifted her chin. In the sovereign core. Corvin went still. Nerith looked down through the bending flames. What is that? No one answered. So Orsena did. The first name was sealed inside the royal flame so no dragon could call it again. Every king since has carried the silence without needing to know its shape. Corvin closed his eyes once. The cost had found him again. His crown had not merely used the tower. His own flame carried the first erasure. If I release it, he said. What breaks? Orsena's voice was cold. Your command over every dragon bound by crown fire. Your war beacons. Your throne rights. Your claim that royal flame descends unbroken. Nerith looked at him. This time she did not tell him what to choose. That would be another kind of carrying him. Corvin opened his eyes and looked up at her window. If I do this, will it free you? No, Nerith said. It will tell us who was buried first. His face tightened. Then he nodded. Because for once rescue was not the point. Truth was. Corvin placed both hands against his chest and pulled. The royal flame screamed. Gold-red fire tore from his armor in a twisting strand, darker at the center, bright at the edges. His dragon shadow roared and collapsed to one knee. Across the kingdom, the opened flames bowed low, not to Corvin, but toward the name being dragged from his sovereign fire. Orsena lunged for the ember key. Nerith thrust her marked hand toward the window. No, the ancient hearth flame answered. Every small flame she had ever tended flared at once. Nursery lamps, sick-room candles, kitchen hearths, funeral lights. Their warmth crossed the night and struck Orsina's key hand, not burning her flesh, but making her remember the women she had filed as yield. She cried out. Corvin tore the last thread from his flame. A name burst into the tower. Not spoken. Remembered. Fireless Lark. Nerith stopped breathing. The ancient flame bent toward her marked hand, and every fire in the kingdom whispered the same terrible truth. Daughter of the first hearth. The name struck Nerith harder than flame. Fireless Lark. It was not only history, not only blood, It moved through her bones like a warmth she had carried all her life without knowing who had first placed it there. The mark in her palm opened wider, a gold hearth circle burning beneath her skin, and every small flame across the kingdom answered with a low, steady glow. Not worship, recognition. That difference mattered. Nerith stepped back from the window, shaking, while the ancient hearth flame bent toward her hand. Behind her, Illyra Morn and the other warmth memories watched with sorrow instead of awe. That frightened Nerith more than if they had knelt. "What does it mean?" she whispered. Illyra's voice softened. "It means they did not end her line." The tower walls pulsed. More names stirred behind the stone now, not fully returned but waking. Women who had been filed as yield. Women called fireless because they made flame gentle. Women whose warmth had been scraped from the world and poured into royal fire until no one remembered why the palace had once felt less cold. Below, the courtyard erupted. Nobles shouted over one another. Ember priests backed away from their own staffs. Soldiers stared at their lanterns as if the flames might accuse them. Corvin Haldrake stood beneath the tower window with both hands still pressed to his chest, breathing hard after tearing the first name from his sovereign flame. His armor no longer glowed with royal splendor. The fire along it was thin, jagged, and red at the edges. Without borrowed warmth, his power looked dangerous and honest. Orsina Marrow rose from where the hearth flames had forced memory into her hand. Her face was pale, but her eyes had sharpened into something colder than fear. "Seal the tower," she said. No one moved. She turned to the priests. "Seal it now." Corvin's voice cut across the courtyard. "No." Orsina faced him slowly. "Majesty, that woman is not merely a servant." Nerith looked down at her. That woman. Already, Orsena was trying to move her out of personhood and into category. "She is Hearth-Origin," Orsina said. "If the dragons remember her blood, crown command will weaken. Noble flame oaths will fracture. Border dragons may answer warmth instead of throne fire. Every house bound by royal flame will question whether your power is command or theft." Corvin's jaw tightened. Orsina saw the wound and pressed deeper. "Bind her now, and the kingdom survives the night." The courtyard went still. Nerith felt the tower listening. The old system had not needed time to invent a new cage. It only needed a new reason. Fireless had failed, so now she would be dangerous. The ancient flame lowered behind her. Illyra whispered, "This is how it began with Avelis." Nerith's throat tightened. They called her threat? They called her necessary first. That was worse. Corvin looked up at Nerith. For one terrible moment, all the weight of his kingdom lived in his face. Beacons dimming, noble houses panicking, border dragons stirring, royal flame injured, old power slipping from his hands. Nerith hated that she could understand the temptation. Then she hated that understanding more. "If you bind me to save your throne," she called down, "at least have the courage to call it hunger." The words landed hard enough that several nobles looked away. Corvin did not. His face changed, not softened. Not healed, not forgiven. Changed by the brutality of being seen before he chose. Orsina stepped closer to him. "A dragon king does not ask permission from a flame that threatens the realm." Corvin's dragon shadow rose behind him, torn and smoke-thin but enormous. Its head turned toward the tower window. Then, slowly, it lowered its muzzle to the stone. Not to Nerith, to the warmth trapped inside the tower. Corvin saw it. So did every noble. His own dragon shadow was not asking him to command. It was grieving what command had consumed. Corvin turned from Orsena. "No one binds her." A sound passed through the court like glass cracking. Orsina's mask finally broke. "Then you choose one servant over every dragon oath in this kingdom." "No," Corvin said. "I choose not to make another woman fuel and call it law." Nerith closed her eyes for one breath. Not relief, not trust, but something like a door unlatching inside her chest. The tower floor answered. The gold hearth marks around her feet widened, connecting into a circle that stretched from wall to wall. Each handprint glowed. Each warmth memory lifted. The tower was no longer trying to eat her. It was asking what shape release should take. Nerith looked toward the ancient flame. "I do not know how to carry them." The flame answered with warmth, not words. Do not carry. Return. She understood. The court had made the Fireless Tower because it believed warmth had value only when removed from the hands that made it. The reversal could not be Nerith becoming a greater owner of warmth. It had to be every stolen warmth finding the flame that remembered it. Nerith stepped into the center of the hearth circle. I will not be your vessel, she said to the tower. The stones groaned. I will be your witness. The ancient flame rose. Below, Orsina moved. She seized the ember key again and drove it into her own palm. Red light burst from the wound, not blood, but command fire stored inside her body. The tower seal screamed. Every handprint jerked inward as if hooked. Witnesses can be silenced, Orsina said. Origins can be harvested. The chamber tilted. Nerith fell to one knee as the tower's hidden furnace opened beneath her. Through the cracked floor, she saw a vast chamber of stolen warmth. Names braided into flame, memories turning on iron wheels, women's handprints pressed into a great circular furnace heart. At its center burned the ancient hearth flame's stolen core. Not free, chained. Orsina's voice rang through the tower. If the Hearth-Origin Daughter will not bind herself willingly, the furnace will remember how to drain her line. Corvin slammed both hands against the tower door, but the seal threw him back. Nerith pressed her marked palm to the floor. The stolen core below opened one blazing eye, and from inside it, a Fireless Lark spoke directly to her. Daughter, do not warm the crown. Fireless Lark's voice did not sound ancient when it reached Nerith. It sounded tired. That made it worse. Daughter, do not warm the crown. The words moved through the furnace beneath the tower, and up through Nerith's marked palm. They entered her bones with the ache of every woman who had mistaken being useful for being safe. Below her, the stolen core burned in chains. A low golden heart trapped inside an iron wheel of names. Nerith stared into it. The furnace was enormous, far larger than the tower above. Its walls were lined with handprints layered over generations, each one pressed into black stone until the fingers had become grooves. Gold warmth ran through channels like melted honey, beautiful enough to hide the theft that made it flow. At the center burned Avalis's core. Not a body, not a ghost. The first warmth the crown had learned to steal. Orsina's command fire crawled through the floor from the ember key lodged in her bleeding palm. Red lines wrapped around Nerith's hearth circle, cutting through the gold marks like wire through soft bread. The tower pulled at her again. This time, it did not try to store her. It tried to open her. Illyra cried out. Move away from the circle. Nerith could not. The furnace had found the mark in her palm. It knew her line now. It knew Avalis's warmth had survived in her. Not as royal flame, not as battlefield fire, but as the quiet ability to keep something small alive without possessing it. That was what Orsina wanted to take. Below, Corvin slammed into the tower door again. The seal threw him back, and his dragon shadow caught him before he hit the courtyard stones. Nobles scattered as the king staggered, his armor nearly dark now. Nerith, he shouted. She hated the fear in his voice, not because it was false, because fear could become command if he let it. Do not tell me to come down, she called. His face lifted. For once he did not answer too quickly. Orsina did. She cannot come down. The furnace has recognized lineage. If she survives the draw, her warmth will stabilize the royal flame for 100 years. Nerith's stomach turned. There it is, she whispered. Orsina looked up through the tower window, her face cold and bright. Yes, there it is. The truth you wanted badly enough to endanger a kingdom. Your line teaches flame gentleness. Without command, dragons devour. Without sovereign fire, border beasts wake. Without the crown's claim, every noble house will try to bind flame for itself. I kept warmth centralized because scattered mercy becomes war when powerful men discover it. The worst part was that she sounded almost sincere. Nerith pressed harder against the floor, fighting the pull. You were afraid of what they would do with warmth. I was afraid of what dragons would do without a throne over them. So you fed women to kings. I fed the crown so the crown could restrain the beasts. Avalis's flame stirred beneath the chains. Then show her. The furnace opened a memory. A dragon valley after Avalis's draining. The dragons did not become gentler under the crown's fire. They became confused, Their flames burned hotter, brighter, more obedient, but their eyes lost the patient glow Nerith had seen in the old memory. They answered riders. They answered war horns. They answered bloodlines. But when children approached their warmth, the dragons recoiled. When the sick reached toward them, their flames sharpened. When funeral lamps were brought near, their breath devoured the oil and left grief in darkness. The crown had not made dragons safe. It had made them useful. Nerith looked down at Orsina. You did not stop hunger. You taught it manners. Corvin heard that. The line struck him visibly. His hand moved to his chest, where his royal flame guttered under the armor like a wound with teeth. What do you need? He asked. The question crossed the courtyard, the tower wall, the furnace heat. Not an order. Not a rescue. A question. Nerith looked into the stolen core. The warmth cannot return through crown flame. Corvin went still. Orsina's eyes widened. Do not. Nerith kept her gaze on the king. If it returns through you, it becomes yours again. Even if you mean mercy. His jaw tightened. She saw the hurt. Good. Let him feel it. A king had to learn that good intention did not cleanse ownership. What do you need? He asked again. Nerith answered softly. Stop being the master of every flame. The courtyard froze. Even the beacons along the ridge seemed to hold their failing breath. Orsina's voice shook with rage. That is not sacrifice. That is abdication of divine order. Corvin looked at the tower door, then at his dragon shadow, then at the flames still bent across the kingdom like eyes, waiting for permission to remember themselves. I was never divine, he said. He removed the black gold signet from his hand. The ring carried the sovereign flame mark of Haldrake kings. A dragon curled around a crown, biting its own tail so fire could never leave the circle. Corvin held it over the tower seal. Orsina lunged toward him. His dragon shadow moved between them, not attacking, blocking. Corvin pressed the signet into the red gold seal and spoke so the courtyard, the tower, and every opened flame could hear him. I release royal claim over warmth not born from my blood. The signet cracked. The sound went through the kingdom. War beacons failed. Temple flames flattened. Noble hearths screamed up their chimneys. The royal fire on Corvin's armor went out. For one breath, the Dragon King stood in darkness, no more luminous than any man beneath a cold sky. Then the furnace beneath Nerith broke open. The stolen warmth did not rush into Corvin. It rose around Nerith in thousands of gold threads and streamed outward through the window, toward every small fire that had remembered. Cradle lamps, sickroom candles, bread hearths, funeral lights, dragon nests, servant rooms, abandoned shrines. Names moved with them, not all complete, not all healed, but no longer yield. Orsina screamed and drove the ember key deeper into her palm. Then I invoked the first containment. The chains around Avelis's core tightened. The ancient hearth flame convulsed. The tower split from base to window. Across the black ridge, something enormous woke beneath the sleeping dragon cliffs. A dragon roar rolled over the kingdom. Not royal. Older. Hungria. The first uncommanded dragon had awakened. The first uncommanded dragon rose like hunger given wings. Beyond the black ridge, the sleeping cliffs split beneath moonlight. Stone fell in burning sheets as an ancient shape unfolded from the dark, its scales black at the edges and white-hot beneath. Its eyes fixed on every freed thread of warmth streaming from the broken Fireless Tower. The dragon did not know the returned names. It only felt warmth no crown commanded, and hunger moved faster than memory. Orsina Marrow lifted her bleeding hand, the ember key buried through her palm. Red command fire crawled up her arm. "Look at it!" she shouted to the courtyard. This is what crowns were made to restrain. Nobles screamed as the old dragon's wings blotted out the stars. Corvin stood before the tower without royal flame, crown light, or sovereign fire. He looked mortal now. Wounded, dark-haired, cold beneath a sky his ancestors had claimed to rule. Orsina turned to him. Take the warmth back. Bind the Hearth-Origin girl. Restore royal flame, or your kingdom burns. For one terrible breath, the court waited for him to become the old kind of king. Nerith waited too. Corvin looked up at her. What does it need? Not what do I command. What does it need? Nerith pressed her marked palm to her chest. The ancient hearth flame behind her burned through its chains with low gold pain. A Fireless Lark's voice rose from the furnace. It was the first dragon I warmed. A memory opened. A wounded dragon in a winter valley, lowering its head to a bowl of water, learning that fire could rest beside human hands without devouring them. Then came chains, crowns, command. The first hearth stolen. The dragon driven beneath the cliffs when it would no longer obey kings. They did not put it to sleep, Nerith whispered. Illyramorn answered softly. They starved it of gentleness. The dragon lunged from the ridge. War beacons shattered. Temple bells cracked. Riders tried to call their lesser dragons, but the beasts cried out, torn between crown training and the warmth waking in every small flame. Orsina raised the ember key. Containment binds all unclaimed warmth to the crown source. Red fire shot toward Nerith. Corvin moved, but Nerith shouted, "No!" He stopped. Good. She did not need another body rushing to save her before listening. Nerith pressed her palm to the broken floor. "A Fireless Lark," she said, voice shaking. "Your warmth is not yield. Your name is not a crown source. Your fire is yours." The furnace chains cracked. Red command fire wrapped around Nerith's arms. Pain cut through her, but she stayed upright. The tower tried to make her a vessel. The crown tried to make her fuel. The dragon's hunger pulled from the sky. Nerith lifted her face to the oncoming beast. "I will not warm the crown," she said. "And I will not feed hunger without memory." The hearth mark in her palm opened fully, not into a crown. A circle. Every returned name answered. Illyramorn, a Fireless Lark. Dozens more rose from handprints, cradle lamps, sickroom candles, bread hearths, funeral lights, servant rooms, and dragon nests. Their names moved around Nerith, not entering her, not owning her, only passing through the circle she held open. The ancient dragon struck the courtyard. Stone exploded. Soldiers dropped their weapons. Its head lowered toward the tower, jaws opening around a furnace-bright throat. Corvin stepped into its path. No flame, no command, only himself. Nerith's heart lurched. "Corvin!" He did not look away from the dragon. "I am not commanding it." The dragon's breath gathered. Corvin bowed his head. "I am returning what my crown stole." He tore off the cracked black gold breastplate that still held traces of sovereign fire and threw it to the stones. The dragon's breath struck the armor. Metal melted. Stolen warmth hissed free in thin gold streams and rose toward Nerith's open circle. Nerith turned the warmth toward the dragon, carrying each name beside it. "Remember Avelis," she whispered. The ancient dragon's fire faltered. Gold warmth touched its mouth. Its eyes, then the hollow place inside its chest where gentleness had been stolen and replaced with command. The dragon made a sound almost like grief. Across the kingdom, the flames lowered, not bowing, resting. Avelis's core broke free of its chains. The ancient hearth flame rose through the tower, through Nerith's marked palm, through every named warmth returning from erasure. It reached the old dragon not as fuel, but as memory restored. The dragon closed its mouth. Orsina staggered back. "It will devour without the crown." Nerith turned to her. "It devoured because the crown taught hunger to stand where warmth had been." Orsina lifted the ember key one last time. The handprints answered first. Every woman the tower had stored sent one named thread into the key. Not fire. Record. The key filled with names until its red command light turned gold, then white, then clear. Orsina looked at her hand and saw every life she had counted as yield. The ember key shattered. Her robes lost their flame. For the first time, she stood in the cold she had assigned to others. The Fireless Tower split open from roof to foundation. Women stepped out as warmth first, then memory, then names. Some were only gold outlines. Some had faces. Some were incomplete. But the world noticed them now. Nurses remembered cradle warmers. Cooks remembered hands that saved bread from burning. Funeral lamps brightened for women no one had mourned because no one had been allowed to miss them. Corvin came to the broken doorway and stopped outside. "May I enter?" he asked. The question almost broke Nerith. "Yes," she said. "To witness, not to claim." He entered and lowered himself to one knee before the women his throne had used. "My crown called you fireless," he said. "My flame lived from what was stolen. I cannot return the years. I can return the names, the hearths, the records, and the law. It was not forgiveness, but it was the first shape of repair. At dawn, the Fireless Tower no longer stood. In its place, hundreds of small hearths burned along the northern wall, each carrying a returned name. Corvin stood beside Nerith, crownless, his royal fire gone quiet. "What am I without sovereign flame?" he asked. Nerith watched the freed hearths catch the first sunlight. A king who has to learn warmth honestly. He reached for her hand, then stopped, just short. Nerith looked at his waiting fingers. Then, by her own will, she placed her hand in his.